Blackwater operatives that were questioned by the State Department and given immunity fit into this story?
Right. I mean, what happened after the Nisour Square killings was extraordinary. You have the puppet Iraqi government saying these guys need to leave the country immediately, and we're going to prosecute them. And in fact, Blackwater's work shut down for 3 days. As one Iraqi friend of mine said, that it turned the green zone into the green zoo, because we saw how embedded Blackwater is in the occupation. No U.S. officials could leave the green zone when Blackwater's work was shut down. And so you understand that, in the words of one U.S. official, Blackwater has a client that will go to the ends of the earth to protect it, to shield it, because the U.S. needs, the Bush administration needs Blackwater. And so the response of the Bush administration at every turn was to try to cover up for the individuals who did this shooting, try to protect Blackwater and shield the company from public scrutiny or any consequences for its actions. So you're talking about the immunity here. This was one of several actions that the Bush administration took that will make any successful prosecution highly unlikely. What happened is that if you or I were alleged to have killed 17 people, if we're lucky in this country, we would be read our Miranda rights, and we would be told that we have the right to remain silent, and anything we say can and will be used against us in a court of law. When the individuals alleged to have killed these 17 civilians were questioned by the State Department, they signed papers that gave them what's called limited use immunity. In other words, nothing you say, and this is what they were told, nothing you say to us can and will be used against you in a court of law. So in other words, they said, if you give us your statement, in turn, we'll give you a protection from anything you say here being used against you later. Just to put it in a historical context, that was how Oliver North got off. Oliver North, of course, of Iran-Contra fame. He was given limited use immunity to testify in front of the United States Congress, and then when the attempt was made to prosecute him, his lawyers effectively argued that the government would not have been able to prosecute him if they didn't use his protected testimony in front of the Congress. The FBI is actually furious about this, because now that they go over there to investigate, the Blackwater guys aren't talking to them. They say, well, we already were given immunity by the State Department. The other thing I have to add, Amy, is that when the first, they called it the first blush report on this incident came out, it purported to be the State Department's view of what happened at Nisour Square. It said that they were ambushed, that there was enemy fire, that the Blackwater men were defending American lives in a war zone, and it was written on State Department letterhead, official stationery of the United States State Department. Well, it turns out it was actually written by a Blackwater contractor named Darren Hanner, and put forward as the State Department's official report on it. I mean, this is all what happened right away. So, a Blackwater contractor named Darren Hanner wrote the official report of what happened at Nisour Square, and it was written on State Department stationery, and then was leaked to the media as a sort of pushback against what the Iraqis were saying. Well, because it's not, well, Blackwater's version of events and the Iraqis' version of events. This was saying this is the U.S. government's version of events, and it said it defended Blackwater all the way down, you know, to the tiny detail about this was an ambush by enemies and insurgents, and in reality, it was written by a Blackwater contractor himself. Those are just the limited use immunity, and this statement from the State Department written by a Blackwater contractor, that's two of scores of incidents that happened after this that lead many to believe that the Bush administration is seriously attempting to cover this up at a minimum.
We're talking to Jeremy Scahill. His book, Blackwater, The Rise of the World's Most Powerful Mercenary Army, the updated paperback edition, is out today. He'll be speaking at New York Town Hall tomorrow. But we're going to come back to this conversation in a minute.
بأبي من حرم النوم
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Our guest is Jeremy Scahill. He's off on a month book tour around the country. We'll link to where he's going. His book is out now. It just won a George Polk Award. It's Jeremy's second, Blackwater, The Rise of the World's Most Powerful Mercenary Army. Jeremy, so what investigation did take place?
Well, the Iraqi government investigated, and they were sort of portrayed as the Iraqi Interior Ministry as a hotbed of sectarianism, and Blackwater sort of cast aspersions on that, and some of their allies in the media were saying, oh, you can't believe anything that the Iraqis say. We have to wait for the U.S. investigation to take place. But what has gotten almost no attention is that a U.S. military unit did respond right after the shooting, arrived on the scene, and Lieutenant Colonel Mike Tarsa and his men did an investigation. And what they found is that there was no evidence of enemy fire. They examined the shell casings on the scene and found no evidence that there were any shots fired at the Blackwater convoy. And they labeled it a criminal event and said that all of the Iraqis killed that day were killed as a result of unjustified and unprovoked gunfire. Now, this has gotten almost no attention whatsoever. But when Bush actually got around to sending the FBI 2 weeks after the shooting, first of all, we learned that the FBI was going to be guarded by Blackwater when they went over there. And then Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont raised a ruckus about it, and the government said, okay, fine, we'll provide our own protection. But when the FBI got there, they found that 14 of the 17 Iraqis killed were killed as a result of unjustified and unprovoked gunfire. And a military official told the Times that the FBI was being too generous to Blackwater in saying that 3 of them were not killed as a result of unjustified and unprovoked gunfire. And so this U.S. military investigation, the fact that federal agents speaking to the New York Times about the FBI investigation said 14 of the 17 were killed, this story has basically still gone nowhere.
Jeremy, you recently questioned Blackwater's Vice President, Martin Strong, about the accountability of private military contractors in Iraq. I just want to play your question and his response. You were both at a conference here in New York at NYU's Center for Law and Security called Privatizing Defense, Blackwater Contractors and American Security.
My name is Jeremy Scahill. I find it very telling that nowhere on this panel do we hear a voice talking about the Iraqi victims of these companies. I find it very interesting the way that Mr. Strong and Mr. Brooks talk about this. We could be at a banking convention. The reality is that Blackwater has killed innocent civilians in Iraq. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Mr. Strong, but the first victims in Nisour Square that day were a 20-year-old medical student and his mother, not al-Qaeda operatives, not Iraqi insurgents. A 9-year-old boy named Ali was shot in the skull, his brains splattered in his son's hands. Your operatives were on the scene that day. They opened fire on these individuals. And if you don't want to take the word of the witnesses, what about the military that investigated it on the spot that day and found that all 17 of the Iraqis killed by your men were killed as a result of unprovoked and unjustified gunfire? This was the military investigation. They also found that there was excessive use of force that potentially violated the rules governing contractors in Iraq. When the FBI findings were released in part to the New York Times, they found that 14 of the 17 were killed as a result of unjustified and unprovoked gunfire. My question to you is, how many innocent Iraqis has your company killed, and what consequences have your men faced for those actions?
Well, Mr. Mann, you answer. You speak as you want to speak in response, sir. Well, I think the third panel is about accountability. If you want to re-ask that question at that point, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how much time you've spent in Iraq or in combat, but I spent 20 years and did 36 combat missions, and I spent 9 months in Iraq. It's a very difficult place, and I think the FBI, who has not issued their investigative report, irrespective of the New York Times or any other newspaper saying that they think they know what's going on, the FBI is going to complete an official investigation, not one done by the seat of the pants. And at that time, we're going to find out exactly what they found out. We have not, as a company, had access to that information, nor did we conduct our own little investigation so I could respond to your question directly. We have no idea what happened there by going back and forensically looking at it. We're awaiting the government's investigation.
Blackwater Vice President Martin Strong, Jeremy Scahill.
Right. Well, I mean, this is typical of how Blackwater views things. You know, it's fog of war. We don't really know what happened. Let's forget about the military investigation. Let's rely on the Bush Justice Department, which, as we know, is the least impartial Justice Department probably of any administration in the history of the United States. And so they're putting all of their eggs into the Justice Department basket. But